G'day guys, welcome to another episode of the Pumped on Property Show. Now, there are certain episodes or certain topics that do get me fucking pumped on this stuff, and This is one of them. This is 13 years worth of mine and Simon's learning condensed into 20, 30 minutes of your time, and I'm just so excited to bring this one to you, which is really going to be about what sorts of properties make the best investments, and we're going to use a heap of data, a heap of personal experiences, so instead of having to go buy a lot of properties like I did and making a whole bunch of mistakes, you can buy a really high quality, small number of properties like Simon has and like I have now that can absolutely smash market averages.
It's so cool. I get so excited about this. You and I can be quite obsessive to our detriment a lot of the times, but I feel as though with this stuff, it's been such a blessing. The fact that we enjoy diving into the data, the fact that we enjoy, reading all the books, listening to all the podcasts, talking to, other experienced investors. And because we're both young and, relatively inexperienced, 13 years is a long time, but, still in comparison to the greats.
Talk to me in 60.
Exactly right. Once we've actually, had a lot more.
90s, I think.
But something that we're both very aware of is we're observant. We watch what other people do, we listen to what other people say, and we collect all of those different opinions and ideas and perspectives to formulate our own opinions, perspectives and ideas. And, to this point, it's been working pretty well. So let's hope it continues into the future. But let's go into it. What's the first part that we want to talk about?
I'll just say something, man. I used to have this stupid ass thing that I used to always say to our mate Lala, which was it takes me 3 times to learn the same lesson before I learn it. And I'm what a horrible belief system to have in the back of your mind versus just you can learn from other people.
What you learn?
Absolutely. And that's what I do now. It's observe, collect data, and it takes me longer to make the decision, but when I make it, it is a 360 view. And I've realised there's never enough information to make a 100% decision. So much of this is still gambling and hoping that it's going to work out.
100%. You've got to, risk it to get the biscuit is what they say. But at the same time, it is the truth. You're never, for you as an analytical guy, how does that feel when you have to make that emotional decision without all the information?
I don't make them anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just collect data and then I make the best decision I can with that.
Yep.
And then the emotions come up, which is a reaction to more debt, taking on the fear of the unknown, the I'm not following the herd and doing what everyone else is doing and staying low. We're trying to actually create financial freedom. For me in my 40s, for you do it in your 30s. It's just an incredible thing, but instead of hitting retirement at 70 and ending up on the pension, which is unfortunately the reality of 60 to 80% of Aussies' futures, we're trying to do something, and that requires a bit more. It requires some more thought, some more planning, a little bit more stress, a bit more anxiety. But if you love it, all of you guys do, then come on, this is what life's about. You're in the jungle.
Exactly. And the revelation that you had recently when you're on holidays is just something that is so amazing. And it's regardless of what you're doing, whether you're, working hard and, highly stressed and you've got a lot on your plate, a lot of stress and emotional, mental feelings are going to come up. But if you're if you're just not doing anything, those same emotions are going to rise to the surface as well. So if we're going to experience them anyway, what do you always say? It's choose your pain.
Yeah, choose your stress. That's
choose
what
your
Dad
stress.
says to me all the time. He's you got to choose your stress because you're going to have it anyway. There were 2 big things that happened for me recently. One was I read, I don't know if the pronunciation's right, Thich Nhat Hanh, we call him
Thich Nhat Hanh, yeah.
His book, Lessons from a Remarkable Life, while I was in Bali. And there was this one point in it, and he's if you've gone through any sort of trauma, which welcome to being a human, whether you've actually gone through it or whether your brain's saying that you have, there's an emotional response and a chemical response and a programmed response in our brains to feel uncomfortable emotions. And unless you do mindfulness, meditation, prayer, gratitude, training, you're most likely going to hook onto those things a lot more heavily than you will if you don't do those things, if you know what I mean. So it's like, what I learned from that is like, a lot of my feelings and my triggers now have nothing to do with my current situation or where I'm at in my life. It's more my body likes high cortisol because I like allowed myself to live like that for more than 30 years of my life. And so it's like, that feels comfortable when I'm wound up and I'm on, versus like feeling a little bit lower when I'm just like, operating on the normal flow. And then I went to the psychologist and told him about that. And he's like, it's a concept in like modern psychology called coat hangering, where effectively whatever you feel and whatever you're like externalizing is the problem in your life, partner, job, not having enough money, having too much money, having a shit job, having a great job, having a good business, having a shit one, it's just going to move. And what I had this realization, I was sitting on the beach in Bali and I was feeling uncomfortable emotions. And I'm like, I can be in Bali sitting on a beach after I just surfed for 4 hours still feeling this. And he's like, yeah, because these uncomfortable emotions want to come up. They want to express themselves if you're keeping them in the dark and pretending they're not there. So let them go, like allow them to be there. Allow yourself to recognize that no matter how stressed you feel, you're going to put that onto something else anyway.
Exactly.
So why not choose a life of like living by your values? Why not spend time with the people you care about, find meaningful work, invest your money, train and meditate and pray and look after yourself and be that full version of yourself that you want to be? Because otherwise you're going to be choosing a life that isn't for you anyway, and you're going to be fucking stressed out in that one.
Exactly. There's a quote, I'm not too sure who it's from. I'll just paraphrase this because I don't have my phone in front of me and I don't know what it is, but it's basically the idea is, you can either live with the pain of regret from not doing something or not committing to becoming the best version of yourself, or you can deal with the pain of becoming that person. Both of them are going to be painful in one way, shape or form. It's just one's moving you toward a better version of yourself and one is keeping you where you are right now. So we have that choice to go, do we want to stay where we are in our comfort zone, in our shell, or do we want to branch out and do we want to go experience this world and challenge ourselves and, help ourselves, and then the byproduct of that is going to be able to help other people and things like that. And this is, I guess, where it all comes from us and why we do get so obsessive about this stuff as well, because we want that bright future. We want to have choices for ourselves and our family, and then we want to be able to provide those opportunities for other people. And when you are living of service like that, it just, it kind of quietens the mind a little bit. It makes you feel alive and excited, and I find it easier to deal with those challenging situations and scenarios if I am moving towards that person. I know these challenges are going to get me to where I want to be, rather than that regret of I'm going to watch another episode of Netflix, or I'm going to sleep in, I'm not going to go training today. I know those decisions aren't enabling me to become who I want. So you've got to move past that. But it's just a weird world. Like, being a human being is such an odd experience, and, it's going to be a whirlwind of emotions always. But let's enjoy it. It's a trip.
It's like, I have this thing for me, which I'm so lucky that I have this in my personality. It's like, I won't die with the music in me. Like, I'm more like Winston Churchill's like concept of like, get in the arena, get bloodied, get bruised, and get a massive smile on your face, and like go to the grave with nothing left in you. Like, you did everything you were supposed to do. You saw everything you were supposed to see. You helped people. Like, you lived a life of service. Like, I care about helping my family financially.
Of course.
But it is less than 1% of my driver right now. Like, my entire driver is to take what we've learnt and to share that with as many people, because I do believe that the more people that get financially free, the less fear, the less fight, the less response, the less like selfishness, the more I have more than enough. And the more you have, the more you can give. Like, once every couple of weeks, we ask ask us anything on Instagram type thing. And yesterday I did one and I answered a few of the questions we got. And one of the questions was like, from this dude, legend, I've asked the same questions before, which was like, do you think investing is selfish? And I'm like, fuck yeah, it's selfish. Like, it is you prioritizing you. But how selfish is it to me, like, to go to 70 to only focus on your own home, to only focus on your own income, to only focus on your own life, to be like squirreling and saving and penny pinching and living in fight and not being your best self and not expressing who you're supposed to be because you never had enough. And because you never had enough, you could never ascend to, it's not about us at all. It's absolutely about everyone else. And we are just one connected unit pretending that we're all isolated from each other. So it's like, for me personally, these fundamentals are the secret sauce. They are the silver bullet. Like, and if you apply them, you will end up financially free and exponentially better off than the average person that just doesn't look at process the same way that you guys do and that you and I do, which is like, there's things that have been working for hundreds of years around the world. Just fucking do them. Like, it is that easy. Like, property investing is so easy. That's why we talk about all this other stuff, because like, if we just talked about it, I'd do 2 videos a year on the fundamentals and that'd be it.
Well, it is that, and it's more about taking action rather than, you know, understanding this stuff. But look, obviously 13 years of doing this for a long time, it makes it easy for us to say that.
30,000, right?
Yeah, exactly. Easier said than done. So why don't we dive into some of these fundamentals? Because what I always say is property investing is more about what not to buy than what to buy. So once you understand the fundamentals, you eliminate so many options, which takes off that pressure, takes away that stress, it takes away that FOMO, it takes away a lot of the things that hold us back from being able to take that action, and you can just dial in and just become super laser focused on what you need to do.
I love hearing that, man, because that's something that we haven't said for a while, but it is absolutely, like, internally, cultural wise, like, we try to not buy shit.
Yeah.
What's wrong with it? And I look at the 60 odd suburbs that we're buying in Southeast Queensland at the moment out of 1,000 that we could buy. And within that 60, there's probably 4,000 house sales a year.
Yeah.
And we struggle to find 150 of them that I would buy for myself, for our clients. Like, we are ridiculously picky, but if you want to outperform markets and averages, then there's layers to this stuff. So the first and most simple thing that you can follow that will set you up for success as an investor is buy houses over any other type of property.
Simple as that. It's the power that's in the land, not what's sitting on top of it. Don't try and think that it's any other different than that, you know. And
Don't try and think that English is Simon's first language or mine in many videos, because it's not. We're actually Spanish.
This isn't opinionated either. Like, this is based off the data. So what do we got?
So the data is simple. Over the last 30 years, according to CoreLogic, the average house in the metro markets in Australia,
combined capital cities,
has done 453% growth, which rocks my entire world in itself. And then the average unit has only done 306. So for those of you who understand like what that means, that's 145% plus difference from just buying one asset versus the other, which means over 30 years, if you bought a 500K unit and a 500K home, one of them, I haven't done the numbers on this, but we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars better off by just buying the same product or the same value, different product.
Now, forecasting forward 30 years from now, if I have the choice to buy a house over a unit and make hundreds of thousands of dollars more in 30 years' time, I'm going to choose the house because I want that extra money. Like, today, it might not seem like a huge difference.
Yeah.
And looking at a unit that's more affordable, that rents a little bit better, might feel a little bit easier to attain. But right now, I don't need that. In the future, I know I'm going to want the extra money. So I'll just go for what's worked in the past and hope that it works the same in the future.
You know, I really like that, man, because as someone with a family, I really, and as someone who massively values lifestyle, like I really enjoy work and I love helping people even more than that. But man, I want to surf. Like, I want to travel. I want to hang out with my kids. I want to drop them to school, take them to sports. Like, I love life. I still feel like the kid in the candy store. Like, I want to train. I want to meditate. I want to do yoga. I want to do boxing. Like, I want to rock climb. Like, I don't have enough time. Like, I read this thing recently from Strength Side, man. I'm like, he's like, when I realized I didn't want money for financial freedom, I wanted money because I fucking love life.
Yeah.
I just love doing stuff, and I want time so that I can do all the things that I enjoy without feeling guilty as a parent or guilty as a business owner, that I want to do other stuff and have fun all the time.
It's a Winston Churchill thing, you know, you get to your deathbed and you want to look back with no regrets going, I left it all out on the table, not just with business and investing, but with enjoying life and surfing and traveling and spending quality time with the people that you love. Like, it is so underrated and so important. I think we've just been brainwashed. We've just been brainwashed to believe that we need to do it a different way, but I don't think that we do. Like, you know, especially for people here in Australia that have more choice than the average person.
You know, with this, I think, like, when I realised, like, every decision, because I'm not a baller, like, I don't have, like, unlimited amount of cash flow to just go buy whatever I want to buy. Like, every decision for me is massive.
Yep.
Every deposit is hard to save. Like, every time I release equity, it's like taking me away from my family. Like, and so it's like, if you've got kids, you're going to have kids, or you love lifestyle, then these things, like, you're going to get a better percentage, but what if you got 10 years of your life back? What if you got to drop your kids to school once a week? What if you got to take every Friday off? And that means you get 13 weeks off almost a year if you just do that one thing. Like, what if you did these things differently? That's why these percentages matter, and that's why we buy houses. And the second fundamental is we buy metro markets.
Yeah.
Now, I own a whole lot of stuff on the Sunny Coast, which is a regional market. I'm not dissing it. Like Byron, Goldie, Geelong, Mornington, Wollongong, Newcastle, Sunny Coast, these are as good as metro markets to me.
They have value for sure, but I think the idea here and what the data is suggesting is the location. You're right.
You have to read that stuff,
you'll run through it. I find it quite logical to think about, because when I think about property, I think about supply and demand. And when I think about supply and demand, it makes logical sense to me that the areas that have the most people living there, those people are competing against each other to earn more money. And those people that are earning more money are paying more taxes. Those people that are paying more taxes, it incentivise the government to bring more infrastructure to those areas: schools, hospitals, universities, shopping centres, train stations, highways, because that's where the money's coming in, and you get this perpetual cycle. Yep. And that makes logical sense to me, that the metro markets or the most populated areas are generally going to outperform others because there's just more supply. I mean, there's more demand.
100%. Like Phil Anderson in his book, The Secret Life of Real Estate and Banking, and also Fred Harrison in his book, The Power and the Land, talk about exactly that. This isn't a new thing that everyone wants to own in New York, LA, Chicago, Sydney, Melbourne, Singapore. This is like, for thousands of years, humans have moved to the place that best meets their survival needs. Now, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, like, they're structured that way because they have the best access for ports. And like the whole world used to work on boating. They have great access for transport. They're big flat basins with a relatively simple environment to live in outside of Brisbane for flooding and Sydney for fires. Like, there's a fundamental reason. And so from a farming perspective, if you look at farming back in the old days before, like when we subsisted off that, people would move to the best location. They would get the highest yield. You could make the most money out of that and productive asset. And then the value as you got further away from the farm was like less, because the yield was rockier, like sandier, like wetter. And so the capital city now is effectively the farm with the most fertile land, because the commodity is no longer food. The commodity is information,
financial
education,
assets,
and finance. And it is people. Like, that is where a service-based economy now, not a agricultural one.
So what's the difference between the performance of houses in metro markets versus houses in regional markets?
It's just as big as it was for houses versus units. Like, capital cities in the last 30 years have done 453% growth. Regionals, have done 313. So we're talking about another 140% difference. Now, I start stacking these things on my mind, and I'm like, well, what if you bought a regional unit like so many people do?
I think it was only like 273% over 30 years.
It's just insane. Like, we're talking about hundreds of percent that you're missing out on by buying the same thing. I know so many people that are buying units in the places they know because that's what they know, versus like looking at a Brisbane and going, man, you can buy a house in many of these markets for 300 grand less than a shitty 1-bedroom unit in the middle of nowhere in Sydney or Melbourne. It's like, and the house, statistically speaking, has a better chance of performance. It's just crazy.
It makes so much sense. And, you know, once again, it just comes back to the, like, what do you want? Like, do you want to choose to have the path of least resistance and have that positive reinforcement from the decisions that you make? Or do you just want to have an underperforming asset that's going to negatively impact your psychological association to property investing as well? And one of the exercises that I do with a lot of clients during strategy sessions at the moment is we will look at the comparison between capital growth and cash flow, because with the rising interest rate environment that we're in, a lot of people want more positive cash flow. I totally understand that. I want cash flow as well. And to me, cash is king when it comes to a journey to financial freedom, which we can talk about. But when you're looking at properties, you know, at the moment with where interest rates are at, you know, you're lucky to get maybe a $50 to $100 positive cash flow if you are buying a unit or a regional house. And when you think about that versus capital growth, you know, maybe you make 10 grand over the next 10 years in cash flow, but what they're expecting is house prices to double in Brisbane over that period of time as well. So you could, if you buy a $500,000 house, it could be worth $500,000 more in 10 years time from now. Like, it's a lot bigger money that we're talking about from a capital growth perspective as well. So it should be forecasted into, not forecasted, it should be taken into consideration with your strategy and not just look singularity at the cash flow side of things.
You know, there's a lot of people probably listening to this going, well, shit, I own a unit, I own a regional place, and that's completely cool. So I've bought a whole bunch of properties. I've done a whole bunch of things that don't fit with this model today. I just won't make that decision moving forward. So I'm extreme, and I actually ended up selling 9 of the properties that I've had. You know, some of them met these boxes that we'll talk about today. Many of them didn't. A lot of them were on main roads, smaller blocks, had no potential to add value, were regional or were units or in the wrong unit complex. So I've made these mistakes. For some of you, keeping a property is absolutely the right thing to do if you're not going to immediately replace it with the same value and a better asset. And then there's no guarantee. Like a unit in Byron Bay could beat the performance of a house in Brisbane in the next 20 years. Who knows what's going to happen? It's like when you break it down to singular markets, some of these fundamentals don't always work. But for me, I will always buy houses moving forward. I'll always buy the metro markets moving forward or the major regionals around them. The next one, number 3, is quality.
Quality over quantity.
Yeah, so quality is a whole bunch of things, and I'll talk to some of the things that they mean for me, and then you can do the same. But, you know, there's cities within cities. There's markets within markets. Now, imagine you put yourself in a time machine and went back 20 years in Australia ago and you had 500K in Sydney. At that point, you could have probably bought a house on one of the beaches in Sydney, or you could have bought a house in, you know, anywhere else west of Sydney, you know what I mean? You could have put the money into Bondi Beach, or you could have put the money into, you know, Penrith, if you know what I mean. The pocket of the city does matter. Although there's some really good data from Jeremy Shepherd at DSR to suggest that over a long enough time period, you know, things will even itself out over time. I'm still a massive, massive, massive advocate for, if you can afford the northern beaches of Sydney 20 years ago, fuck, that was a better decision than buying Penrith, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's less about the performance, and like, to me, the quality comes in the tenants that I'm going to be renting the house out to and how they're going to look after the property. The schools nearby and the types of families that are going to be living nearby, the incomes that they're earning, the access to lifestyle factors, you know, all of those things, whilst we might not have the data to suggest how much they actually improve the value of a property, but I don't know, maybe it's an ego thing, maybe it just feels better to own properties there, but like, to me, that matters. It
matters to me as well. Like, you know, like quiet streets matter.
Yeah.
Quality suburbs matter to me. Like large blocks of land, at least 500 square meters.
Yeah.
I have this gut feeling that, like, the bigger, the better when it comes to land. This idea pre-COVID of like, let's cut everything up into tiny blocks. It's not everyone's dream. In fact, it's really like the opposite of many people's dream, but it's a starting point. I've started there. I've lived on the 300 square meter blocks because that was my stepping stone to what I really wanted. And many people have to go through that. Like, I do believe that larger homes not just attract better tenants, but longer term tenants with higher incomes, and they do increase in value further. In many markets in Australia, in Brisbane, for example, I can buy a home that's 200 square metres for 550K or 80 square metres for 500K. The market isn't pricing that 120 square metres it would cost $300,000 to build right now properly, but it is in Sydney and Melbourne because they've gone through 15 years of growth. So I think about that, like larger land sizes, larger homes. I do think about infrastructure, schools. Like, I didn't used to think about that stuff at all, but now that I'm on the sunny coast, like the pocket that I live in has the 3 best schools in Queensland in it, not just the sunny coast, and like a whole bunch of other schools that are quality as well. Like, it matters because you get this concentration of wealth, because people don't, especially people that value their time, don't want to spend more than 15 to 20 minutes a day either way in their car dropping kids to school. Like, these things do matter, and I value them a lot more than I used to, because I'm only going to buy a couple of properties, maybe a handful in my lifetime. You know, I want to outperform averages.
Exactly. And I think, you know, quality can be subjective as well, because, you know, for sure I would prefer to buy a property on the northern beaches of Sydney if I could afford it. For sure I'd prefer to buy a property in inner city Brisbane or on the beaches up here on the Sunshine Coast. But for me personally, my budget hasn't allowed me to do that. So as an investor, I understand that I'm a bit of a slave to the banks and I can only do what they'll enable me to do. Yeah. So what that means is still looking at this quality from a different perspective and just going, okay, well, I can't get what I would ideally want because I can't afford that. But what I'm going to do is get the best I can afford. So I'm going to go to the areas that have the better schools. I'm going to go to the areas that have a high concentration of owner occupiers. I'm going to go to the suburbs that have higher than average household incomes. You know, these are the things that I'll look at, and, you know, maybe they're not the highest income earners in Southeast Queensland, but they're higher income earners compared to some of the neighbouring suburbs in that area. Yeah. So you are confined to a budget, and you do have to just try and get the best you possibly can from this. And still that comes to a comparison. It's like, you know, if you've got a $500,000 budget, you can choose between a really, really high quality suburb in Brisbane that's up and coming and definitely represents long-term value versus maybe just a random regional property in bumfuck nowhere in regional Queensland. And it's like, I know I'm going to go to the area where there's more owner occupiers, where there's higher income earners, where I'm closer to the quality amenities and infrastructure that are coming to the market, because the data suggests that long-term that will put me in a better position.
I really like that, man. Like, I think, like, in terms of answering this question, like, what sort of properties make a better investment? Like, you've just hit a big one on the head. Like, we start where we can afford to start. My first property was 360K. My next one was 213. My third one was 310. My next was 400 and something, 429. My next was like 458 or something like that. Like, we start with what we can do. And if you want to at some point, like, you know, release that portfolio and replace it with like a smaller number of high quality assets, I decided to make that decision. Plenty of people are like, why would you ever sell? Other people are like, why would you pay that tax on selling? Why would you pay the incoming and outgoing fees? But I'm like, for me, a small number of very high quality properties is what I'm after. Now, I've still got a whole bunch of properties in my portfolio that don't suit where I'm at as an investor now, but they are good enough. They're going to do very well in the long term, and they are reasonable areas that were priced at what I could afford at the time that I was doing it as well. And the silver bullet that we both found is this 10-year average thing. Yeah. Like, I think when I found out about the Jeremy Shepherd 25 years worth of a review of Sydney and found that Bondi Beach, Parramatta and Penrith, almost statistically speaking, did the same average, might give or plus like less than 1% a year, I went, well, how can we use that to pick the market? Because he went on to say that places that outperform in the first 10 years, cities, suburbs within a city, underperform in the second 10 of a 20-year cycle. And the opposite is true. Places that underperform overperform in the 10 years. And it's just the domino effect. It's that next suburb effect. It's the neighbouring suburb thing. And so we strategically look. We know that Brisbane, in the last 30 years, according to CoreLogic's done almost 15% averaged out per year. And we know over 50 years averaged out, it's done like 9.7% a year. So if I can find a suburb within 25 Ks of the city that's done 3% in the last 12, knowing that it's done 9% over 50 and 15% over 30, there is a huge likelihood based on the Melbourne and Sydney examples where the ripple has got out there of upside. And if you can use that, that is the easiest way to short-term pick a market for performance and make money relatively quickly being a 5 to 10 year period.
And one of the other things that helped us come to this conclusion was understanding the 18.6 year real estate cycle and sort of debunking the idea that, you know, properties double every 10 years. A real estate cycle runs a lot longer than most people expected. And then looking at the year-on-year performance in the major metro markets around Australia in comparison to that longer-term real estate cycle. And you can also clearly see that there's areas to invest at certain stages throughout that cycle. And you can really look at that 10-year performance to figure out where a specific market is at in comparison to its long-term average and the 18.6 year real estate cycle. So if I know that we're coming into the second half of the real estate cycle where Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide typically do well, and I'm analysing a suburb that's only done 2% per annum up until that point in time in that suburb, in that market, I'm like, oh, here we go. Where most people would look at that and go, 2%, this suburb sucks.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like, this is cream. This is the best area to invest in right now. So it is relatively counterintuitive because most people want to invest in the winners, the suburbs that have performed the best. But statistically speaking, that is not necessarily a recipe for success. And you actually need to use the longer term cycle, the longer term averages, and then the 10-year average to justify where things could be heading.
You know, it's funny, like, because in betting, right, in sports, like, you aren't going to bank on the team that won the grand final the year before to win the grand final again. Like, many people think they've got a good chance, but it's like, that is not bankable. That isn't like 100% guarantee. But with investing in property, which for many people is a gamble, is, you know, because they're not following the fundamentals that you guys do and that we do, it's kind of like, that suburb did well, boom, I'm all in, expecting like that to be enough. But it's exactly the same as a footy team. It's like there's a recency bias that comes in property, and that's why people invested and continued to buy Sydney and Melbourne for way longer than they should, and that's why those markets are peeling back at the moment. That's why no one's looked at Brisbane, Perth or Adelaide in the last 10 years, because statistically speaking, they haven't been in any Homely reports, any CoreLogic reports. They haven't been on the TV because you're either looking at the TV as a boom or a bust market. And so, you know, I like it. I think low vacancy rates are another really good indicator.
Yep.
I've found a correlation using CoreLogic and SQM's data that when vacancy rates sit below 1% for a period of a year plus, we just, because it is so hard to rent, some people get the shits with trying to rent and they just buy.
Yeah.
Especially when rates are low. And so there's a correlation there of upside. Many of Australia's best property markets that have underperformed in the first half of this real estate cycle have vacancy rates below 1% right now, including Brisbane, and that is why we're all over that market.
And how I personally do this is I don't just look at the vacancy rate, I also look at the suburb. And for me, it's getting into the already established suburbs that have those low vacancy rates where they've already been fully developed. You know, I don't necessarily love the vacancy rates in the inner city because supply can, you know, go up and down so easily. A big developer can buy a piece of land or an old 4-pack of units and put in 100.
Exactly.
But in these suburban regions, maybe 10 to 30 kilometres from any CBD, where you've predominantly got houses on large pieces of land that has been fully developed and you've got low vacancy rates, it's like, I don't see these changing too much. I don't see these fluctuating too much. Whereas when you're investing in new suburbs or inner city apartments where you've got really high density, lots of supply, those vacancy rates are going to skew, they're going to change. But then also with vacancy rates, I'm an investor. I'm renting that property out to tenants. I want the property to be rented for as long as it possibly can to reduce the vacancy, to increase my cash flow and to ease my stress and to reduce my risk.
I love that. Like, we've had a rule in our business for the last 7 years since I started it, which was we don't buy in suburbs with a vacancy rate below 2%, and we've held above 2%. So anything below 2% would be considered undersupplied, and that rule has served us so well because you find a tenant within a week or two, worst case, even during COVID, these suburbs were full, and it puts pressure on that market. People are trying to get in that can't get in. They buy instead, they renovate over time, and these suburbs do gentrify. For me personally, I like to look at DSR when I'm looking for a property to buy in a suburb. I won't get into that in this video. We might do another one on that. I personally just added some stuff that I look for when I'm trying to find the right investment property to buy. I'm close to the city or the beach guy. I've just seen Sydney gentrify over 35 years and I know what's coming in every capital city off
Very
the back
observant
of watching it. Yeah, I was listening to mum and dad talk about not buying property on the northern beaches and I was like, should have done it, mum. It was $300K.
It cost them a fair bit of money moving to Engadine instead of buying in DY. But you live and you learn.
We live and we learn, and I learn. I watch that stuff and I do learn from it because I see people's day-to-day choices and where that gets them. I'm very observant of that. Because of the health foundation, I'm observant of if health A plus B will potentially equal C, hoping, it's the same with money. It's what you do with your money consistency beats effort in money every day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think these fundamentals really honestly eliminate probably 90% of the market at any given time.
Yeah.
And by eliminating 90% of the market, you've only got 10% to look at. So you're refining it down, you're becoming more focused, you're becoming more clear on your goals, and that's going to enable you to get the best result. When you're chipping and changing through different strategies, suburbs, property types, purchase prices, it's overwhelming to get the result that you need, and you might make an emotional decision just being fatigued from the process. Whereas when you're clear and it takes you, 5 to 15 minutes to analyze an opportunity and then, rule it out, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to rule out, we're trying to get to the no, because the yes will eventually find itself. It can be clear, and it can obviously help you long-term by focusing on these things. And as humans, we have this habit or ability to just overcomplicate things all the bloody time, where simplicity is the key, right? Just focus on these fundamentals that have helped many investors become financially free and got people some amazing returns long-term, and just move into action. Put it into gear and move forward. Go talk to who you need to talk to and get that next step in motion.
100%. I think the simplicity is the key. When you go, I'm only going to do Metro, and I'm only going to do East Coast Metro because that's where 75% of the population, income, job, infrastructure is coming in the next 25 years, according to the ABS. Then I'm just going to do Brisbane because Sydney and Melbourne have already gone through their 10-year cycle and they're really expensive and the yields are really shit.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of people overexposed down there. And at some point, the water will dry up and we'll see that in the market.
But then in Brisbane, you've only got, let's say, $600,000 budget. So it's going to rule out a whole bunch of options.
You go, okay, I can afford Brizzy. That's where I want to be. I'm only going to do houses. I've only got a $600K budget. Cool. Can't do north anymore. Can't do the city. Can't do east. Cool. I've got west, south, southeast, southwest. And then within that, I only want to be within 30Ks of the city. And then I want vacancy rates to be below 2%. I want incomes to be above $1,500 a week. I want 75% mums and dads living there. I want close to the train line and the main road.
You'll find 4 suburbs.
You know what I mean? And you'll find us buying every one of the properties on the suburb off market before they come online.
Yeah.
But it's
let's compete.
But it's you know what I mean? It becomes so simple. And then if you find 4, then it's let's look at these 4 and then let's choose one. And then let's become obsessively focused on that one suburb for 3 to 6 months. Let's build a relationship with the 3 top agents. Let's get a map from Google and put a red line on every cemetery, main road, power line, bus route, school,
busy,
shopping
noisy areas.
centre. And it's like, wow, from this suburb, once you draw the red lines through the arterial bits, there's not much. And then if you're like obsessive like we are, it's like, well, let's jot 2 years worth of sales, blue if they're high, green if they were sold in the middle, red if they were low. And then it's like when you take the main roads, the cheaper areas, and you want to buy the premium, you'll find that there's maybe one property every 2 months that actually meets every one of your goals and criteria. And so instead of having this overwhelming thing, you know the suburbs so well, you just wait for that one to come up and make sure you pay a reasonable price, and hopefully you've got a relationship with the agent before you have to. It's like, it really, 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 when you apply fundamentals, houses, metro, good pocket, quiet street, big block, good size home, it just becomes really, really, really simple to do this. And this is what we hope we can get across. Like property, when we say it's easy, it's like hard to get to one suburb, but not really, because you should be looking at Brizzy. There's the like tip, southwest, southeast Brisbane, within 30 Ks of the city. Like that is the most undervalued pocket of the East Coast in Oz. So it's like, you know, find a good suburb within that and just obsess about it and get a great property. 7 analysts in the Financial Review think that that pocket of the city is going to double in value in the next 10 years. 3 other analysts that I respect a lot more than those 7 all think it's going to do between 30 and 100% growth in the next 4 years. Like, and I think it's going to do none of those things because I have no idea what's going to happen. It's exciting. Like, and property can be passion. It can be fun. It can be the thing that excites you because you're working to freedom. You're helping yourself. You're helping your kids. You can talk to your partner about something different. And if you're bored with your job, this is a new job. This is a new business you get to start. And how fun's that?
Because what we worked out is if you had bought a house 30 years ago in any capital city in Australia, you would have made about $760,000. This is like the averages, which is an extra $25,000 per year. You know, if you're earning 80K per year, it's over $100,000 salary once you factor in your investments there as well. So, you know, these do have weight. And I feel as though if you can use this timing aspect that we're talking about to your advantage, you could probably get even better returns on that as well.
You know, that's factoring in Hobart, Adelaide, Perth,
Darwin,
Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Canberra. Like, what if you just looked at Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane? Like,
exactly.
The average return, it's exceptional. Like, 2 decisions my grandma made 30 years ago, theoretically, could have given her $1.5 million in cash in retirement. Yep. Like, that is choices to not end up week to week trying to live off 450
relying on your
or
children.
$600. And like, you know, the time of your life when you really want choices for good healthcare, to get to Pilates, to get to that yoga class, to see your mates, because that social side's so important.
To shop at the farmers markets instead of, you know, Coles and Woolies, get better quality food into you, which is going to enable you to live longer and healthier and more have more vitality as well.
I love it. I'm so excited about this for you guys. Like, I really have found my passion again in property, and, you know, same as you guys, like, you go through waves, and unfortunately I've been on a down wave, but I'm so excited about it again because I've just fully connected that it can change your life so much for the better. It can give you choices. And most importantly for me, as someone who wants to see the like global consciousness just fucking improve and really quickly while I'm alive, I want people to be kind to each other. We need to get out of survival. We need to get away from even having a concept of a fight or a war. We need to get to a point where it's like, there's people that are okay that can pull the next people up.
Yeah.
And like over generations, we can get this like constant fear and fight out of our systems and into a place where it's like, we genuinely just want the best for each other, and that is the community that we want to create, and we want to be part of the change.
Yeah, and it starts with you. Like, it starts with the individual. Like, there's a lot of other things that are occurring on a much larger scale that are going to unfold regardless of what we decide to do. So you can choose to be a part of the solution or a part of the problem, and what we want everybody to do is become part of the solution, take control of your life, you know, challenge yourself, take risks, but calculated risks, and work towards creating a better life for yourself, your family, the closest people to you. And then once you get there, you'll naturally be able to start helping other people, become a mentor for other people, educate others on how you got to where you are so they can follow in your footsteps. And there is this beautiful compound effect that's going to happen, and we'll end up at that place in the future. But it starts with you. It starts with the individual, and you've got to take control of your life, and you've got to do what needs to be done to shift to this higher sense of being.
You know, I was recently like cleaning up this shed because it was a shit show. It's just a dumping ground, eh? And I was like, I just wanted to like cleanse a little bit, and like cleansing for me is like letting go of some stuff and just creating space for my wife to buy more stuff. But it's like, and me looking around with all my weights and surfboards and yoga mats.
Surfboards, skateboards.
Kids love painting at the moment. But you know, all jokes aside, like when I was looking through, I found this book that I had when I was at university and in my first like meaningful year of work, and it was like my goal at that time was create $40,000 a year of passive income, $800 a week, and that was to cover the $500 a week of expenses that I had, including car, phones, internet, bills, rent, etc. Plus that would give me $300 a week to like spend on like food basically and travel, which were the only things that I like wanted to spend money on. And it was like that was my big goal, and at the time I was earning $45,000 a year. I owned 2, and I was working towards my 3rd property. Like I wasn't starting on this crazy salary or this crazy savings, had no idea what I was doing. Now, Simon and I give $500 every single week, which is 25 grand a year, to Suncoast Care, a local charity that feeds people, that gives emergency relief to local families. I didn't realize that there's like thousands of people living on the streets up here, and kids going to school without food on the sunny coast in Australia near the beach, let alone like overseas. And then we've just put a relationship in with a referral partner. Instead of taking that money, we'll end up getting another $10,000 to $30,000 a year, which will go straight to charity, whether that's Charity Water or Suncoast Care or somewhere else. And we're probably going to be ending up giving more than that $800 a week, which is what I thought I needed to live for myself, when all I cared about was me and my survival, to other people to help with theirs. Like, it means at Suncoast Care they can get a full-time person in with actual skills who can support these people to actually create meaningful, lasting change versus here's a $50 voucher for some food today. You know what I mean?
It's very fortunate. And, you know, I met with Jack Delosa recently, just at a friend's bucks party. And then he was sort of telling me, he's like, you know, where you're at right now, Simon, you're thinking small. Like what you're going to be able to do is, you know, help a very small percentage of the population. But if you go hard and if you, you know, work on improving your skills and learning new things and increasing your net worth and networking, he's like, you can then go there in the future and actually have such a bigger impact on a much larger portion of the population. So it's funny the way that we do that. Like the question that you got asked in the question box, you know, is it selfish? And it's like there is such a two-coined approach there again, to just go, you know, a lot of the time it's like, I want to do it now. I want to help other people now because I feel the need to do that. But it's like, what if you delay that to set yourself up first to then have the ability to do more when you actually can, which is where we're getting to now, because we've felt that in the past where we feel selfish, like we are just focusing on ourselves, but we've naturally just got to this point in our life where we're fortunate enough and have enough to be able to give back. And this is just the beginning. You know, like this is our 1st or 2nd year now of being able to do this, put 10 years onto it.
Yeah,
you know,
I've got a goal on our board in the office, like 500 grand.
Yep.
In my like ideal life board, when I, you know, like there's going to be a point where I don't need anything more. Like, and for me, like I know I've written down what that point is for me. I'll continue to play the game because I like being in the arena.
Yeah.
But it's like, what if I bought properties and held them for 10 years and when I sold them gave 100% of the profit to charity?
Yeah, like what Patagonia just did.
What if I ended up being able to give, you know, I need this amount and you can give a few $100,000 a year to charity? Like, it's exciting. I know in the Warren Buffett HBO doco, his wife really wanted to contribute to charity, and he's like, if you give me this money for another 30 years, instead of giving a couple of $100,000 now, we're going to give
hundreds of millions,
billions. Like billions. He gave away 80-90% of his net worth like recently, and it's like, I'm talking like the impact that has is exceptional. I heard this great thing that's taken a lot of pressure off me recently, which is you don't have to be the solution. You just have to be part of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, be kind. Like, maybe at some point you've got a little bit more. The more you have, the more you can give. And maybe you want to give a bit financially. Maybe you want to donate your time. Maybe you want to donate your skill set. Maybe you want to plug in a piece to a local charity that needs a new website that could exponentially improve just by having something that like people can connect with more. Like, what if you went and spoke at your local church and helped raise their money, or whatever your local community, like once a month? And it's exciting to think about financial freedom not just being like a series of ones and zeros, which it absolutely is if you want to invest well, and we've talked about that, but also the softer things like you becoming your best self, you inspiring your kids through your actions, you helping the community and the world to become better, and you just living like there's, like one opportunity to do this, to like be that version of yourself. That's it. That's what excites me. Like,
love that, man.
How far could you go, but not financially? Like, how far could you go in contribution and service? That's exciting.
Yeah, I love that so much, man. No, we're so fortunate to be where we are and be able to have these conversations and have a platform to just speak our minds, and people that are willing to listen as well. And hopefully this can grow. But absolutely love it. Plenty of data in this one, some philosophical stuff as well, as we always do.
Yeah.
But I think with these fundamentals, if we implement them in the right way, the future looks bright for a lot of people.
And don't get me wrong, man, like I've still got a shitload of debt I've got to pay off.
Oh, yeah.
I've still got to come to work, and I've still got to make that money, and I've still got, like, I want to travel. Like, I want to have the best life. I set up my little home gym. I want a sick surfboard. I want to be able to buy a new surfboard or two every year. I want to be able to take my kids to rock climbing twice a week and spray $100 because I'm too much of a tight ass to buy them the shoes and stuff. Like, I want to be able to live. Like, we're not talking about being hermits or ballers. We're just talking about figuring out what's authentically us. And that changes. Like, 5 years ago, all I wanted to do was become a millionaire. I don't know why. All I wanted to do was like chase money. All I wanted to do was work my ass off. All I wanted to do was invest every cent. All I wanted to do was save every cent. Like, now it's like, fuck, I had to do that to get here. And many of us have to do many things, but it's like what if you're starting your journey and you can add a bit of consciousness to it, a bit of breath work, like a bit of, this is scary, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like, that's exciting.
It feels good.
Feels good. Yeah. There you go.
we'll end it on that.
Yeah.
Woo, that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Have a cool, bro. Yeah. Oh, sweaty. So sweaty. Oh, that's good. Look at that. So nice, eh? Oh.